call that they've emphasized being more consistent and more stringent in calling of, guys having lined up, with not having enough people on the line of scrimmage. Guys having lined up, with not having enough people on the line of scrimmage. Guys having lined up.
That's my fault. Hey, Vinny, how you doing?
Doing fine. Sorry I didn't post many vlogs this week. I've been very, very busy.
Understood.
But yeah, I've been keeping up with the games the last few days. Not a single point. My dad's doing better.
Awesome.
Yeah. Outside of that, it's pretty decent. Nothing really that new for me. But I want to talk about some football. That's what I'm here for. Of course, it's halftime for the.
Are you ready for some football? Yeah, we're ready. Sorry.
Yes, we are. That we are.
I do want to mention. I want to start mentioning like the Raiders. That was.
I'm sorry, Vinny. That was a visceral reaction. I'm sorry. It just.
No, don't worry. That game was like at this point, I didn't even care. At that point, I didn't even care who would. I just wanted points to be scored. Like that was a defensive battle for the ages. I'll say no points scored until the final 2 minutes of the game.
Yep.
Yeah, but you know what? No decent true Raider team gets shut out. Shut out. Shut
at
out.
Home.
Yeah. Well, the injury, right? The injury that Josh Jacobs obviously did not help. The game, you could see that both teams just had really struggles even getting sometimes plays in. The Vikings ended up pulling their starting quarterback and putting in Nick Mullins. And to his credit, they looked a little smoother. Still not explosive, but a little smoother once Mullins came in there. And obviously, Justin Jefferson has a lot of rust on him. He first came back off of injured reserve. So you just saw a real lack of continuity on both teams.
But the knock on this Raider team by Raider fans, and I've gotten texts from people I haven't talked to in quite a while today about this Raider team in Las Vegas, is that it is not a true Oakland Raider team. And true Oakland Raider teams don't get shut out. They move the ball, they strike downfield, and they're tired of this sort of short ball that they've been putting up with for the past few years. So they're even old Oakland heads are livid about it. Some who played before, some haven't. Like my friend Breen Dixon, who was one of the Black Hole Raiders. We've been texting off and on all day long. And I got to agree with him. The identity of the Raiders is just, it's gone. They don't know who they are anymore, and they don't take any pride in the fact that, well, that's not fair, but it just seems like they don't take any pride in the idea of not getting shut out and playing knock the blank out of you football 24/7. And that's what's coming across to me now from a lot of people. And what, I understand that now Mark Davis is fabulously wealthy and the organization's worth $6 billion and, all that sort of rot, but it's not the same. It's a pass through. It's almost soulless. What are the Raiders now? We're all asking, what are the Raiders now? And is it more a fodder for some other team that somebody else in Las Vegas really wants to see as opposed to them? And do they just have to start winning and that's all there is? The old Raiders, it wasn't about winning. It was about an attitude that did produce wins, an attitude that was based on the ideology of winning, but it was also an attitude and ideology and a style personified by wearing black. And now, what is it? I don't see it. I don't know. I don't see it. My mom says Raiders mess up. Yeah. So, I don't see it.
The Raiders just did not play well at all, really, for the most part. Because now, to be fair, Josh Jacobs getting hurt did not help. And I got to give credit to the defense. Not allowing any points until the last 2 minutes of the game is huge. The problem is there was no real connection with the offense and its receiving core, just in general. In fact, you look at like QBR, for instance, Aiden O'Connell and Josh Jacobs, they both finished in the bottom 5 for QBR this week. They have
I think
really
you mean
bad
Joshua
games.
Dobbs.
Josh Dobbs, yeah.
So some other things.
Although in fairness to what Vinny said, he wasn't close from Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, well,
That's
so
true.
yeah, I mean, he was most effective running the ball. Actually, Dobbs was most effective when he's actually carrying it as opposed to throwing it. The thing that stood out to me, you mentioned neither team could get big plays, and you mentioned throwing the ball deep. There's a couple of components, as you know, that go into throwing the ball deep. One is protection. The Raiders' offensive line was miserable today. The other thing is you have to have someone.
Cole Miller being out didn't help either.
Yeah, right, exactly. They had injuries to compound just generally poor play. You also have someone who is a deep ball receiver, and it's a slightly different set of skills that go into being a deep ball receiver. And people always think about speed, and speed is one component, but lots of very fast people didn't become deep ball receivers because you also have to be great at tracking the ball.
But I wasn't. But this is a continuation of a conversation we had this morning, Bill, because it really points to a difference in philosophy. When I talk about that, I'm not talking about just a conventional way of lining up. I'm simply talking about, I don't care how you do it, throwing the ball deep. I don't care if it's rolling out like we did with Darryl Lamonica and throwing to Clem Daniels, a halfback deep, which we did in the 60s a lot. I don't care how you do it. The Raiders found ways to throw deep, okay? They weren't classic as you're presenting, all right? But they were ways of throwing deep. They attacked deep. They attacked deep. They figured out
but they also had a speed advantage almost every time they lined up. They were one of the fastest teams in the league. This is not that team. They do not have speed. This is a team that has a speed deficit. This is a speed deficit.
Yeah.
When Darren Waller was the last person on this team who had consistently a speed advantage over whoever covered him. Everyone else on this team is a person who struggles to even run with, let alone away from the people who are covering them.
But even then, here's a good point you make right there, Darren Waller. All right, Bill, you have to agree. We didn't even use Darren Waller properly when we had him, right?
Oh, I'm 1,000% agreeing with you that Darren Waller could have been better utilized, but he's not there. I guess is what I'm pointing out also.
He's not even there.
You can't utilize him anymore at all. So when I think about how this team is currently constructed, this is a team constructed to bang on you in the run game and then occasionally take some shots off play action. But if you can't bang on whoever you're playing in the run game, they don't have really a plan B. So, and you saw that, right? Mm-hmm. When they couldn't get movement, they couldn't get consistent production in the run game. They weren't picking up 4, 5, 6, 7 yards in the run game. Now, when you're picking up 2 yards in the run game, now it's 3rd and 8. And you have problems with protection, and you don't have people that break tackles or people that run away from people. Big plays are hard to come by when you don't have the ability just to run from people, and you don't have someone who is.
And here's where I go. This is, again, a philosophical difference. You practice. The deep ball is something you practice. You don't necessarily have to be the fastest. But Bill Walsh proved that better than anybody else because the whole idea of the Walsh offense was to complete passes in spite of close coverage. You know, the idea that you're presenting of the deep ball is, well, I've got to have somebody that outruns up everybody else. But if you take a look at the 49ers with Coach Walsh, they didn't have anybody that outran anybody else. What they had is a technique and understanding of speed and how to use in space, more importantly, space and timing. And they practiced it to a fare thee well. Other teams don't do it. And the reason why I'm pushing this is because I'm advancing the argument that I'm continuing on is that the NFL does not teach the passing game properly today. It's shoddy. It doesn't pay attention. I will argue that the 90s passing game was better in terms of precision. Today, it's messy. That's it.
I would say for some teams, you're definitely right. I mean, the Browns' offense of the Sam Rutigliano days was, I would say, structurally better than the one they're running now. There's plenty of things I would sort of bang on, like you are, that say this is better than that, that's better than this.
Oh yeah,
But here's
that's
what I
always
will
the way
say:
it is.
you don't have to be the fastest person in the world to be a great deep ball receiver, but you have to be fast enough to
Right.
be where the ball is when it's coming down out of the air.
Or have
The way-
have yourself in the right position and understand. Sorry, Vinny. I'll just say
Right,
this.
it's about
I was gonna put
positioning.
one point though, Vinny. You have to understand, for example, if you go back, you look at all of the Bill Walsh coach teams, going back even to Stanford, they mastered throwing from the hashtag. All right. And so the post pattern was ran where if you were in the middle, let's say ball in the middle, split in on the left side, the splinter was running up and then 12 yards, and then you meet 40 yards downfield at the hashtag. So you don't see that kind of precision. Today, it's all over the place. Oh, maybe the ball is going to be all the way over here, all the way over there. I mean, it's ridiculously off, okay? And it's annoying, fist-poundingly annoying to look at. Sorry, go ahead, Vinny.
No, I was going to say just in general, when it comes to things in general for, scheming and also plays, yeah, some areas it's going to be better than others, and some errors and some for the opposite effect. With the Browns, their offense is more emphasis on the run. I mean, Joe Flacco almost feels like a perfect fit for those teams, because I remember back when he was with the Ravens earlier in his career, he was like a glorified game manager in a sense that whenever you need to throw the ball deep down the field, he'd be the perfect guy to do it, because he definitely had a cannon. And the Browns, he had the best performance in terms of pure passing with throwing the ball. Just he threw the most amount of yards for any Browns quarterback this year. And now because of that win, congrats to Mr. Joseph Vincent Flacco for getting his 100th win for his career in the regular season. The Browns now, according to Steve Kornacki of NBC, a 75% chance of making the playoffs. I can't even believe that this team that went 0-16, won in 2017, 1-31, you go back even further, and then 4-44 in a span of 3 years. I can't believe that the Cleveland Browns, that are Kevin Stefanski, can bring this Cleveland Browns team to the playoffs 2 years out of 4 seasons. That's incredible. And shout out to the Cleveland Browns organization for getting this done.
Yes, and Andrew Berry specifically, right? Sashi Brown.
Andrew Berry's done a great job.
Sashi Brown was the one that sort of brought in analytics and moved away from some of the more, Joe Meathead traditional football guy stuff they were doing before that. And then, he didn't survive, he didn't get a chance to sort of see the fruition of his work. They changed a lot of things they did in terms of player evaluation, and they've done a much better job of drafting now than when they were, missing so wildly on players, like Jonathan Paul Manziel and Justin, not Blackman, Justin, what was his name?
Gilbert. Blackman was with the Jaguars.
Yeah,
Gilbert was with the Browns.
You got to get this in because he paid some money. Search High, Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy should be co-MVPs. What do you guys think about that? And thank you very much for the contribution, Church High. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Co-MVPs, that happened 1 year. That was 2003, if I recall, or 2004 2003 between Peyton Manning and the late Steve McNair, rest of his soul, of course. I don't know if it would really happen this time, because back then it was just choose one guy and that's your MVP. Now it's a tier system. So you're like, you choose your top 5, number 5, number 4, number 3, number 2, number 1. It's all ranked. Whoever has the highest in total wins it. So that would not happen this day and age, unless like it's a very, very rare circumstance, and it's statistically next to nothing. So as for who I think would be MVP between the two, I know it's tough to really say, because the MVP race feels so wide open, because Dak has a case, Tyreek Hill has a case, Lamar Jackson has another case. You can look for the Niners, forget just Brock Purdy. You can make another case for Christian McCaffrey if you wanted to. Just in general, there's a lot of really good options to choose from. But as for which one of those two I think is more likely, just because of the offense as a whole and how he's been leading the league in a lot of categories, I think Purdy might just win MVP while it's all said and done.
Yeah.
What a story that would be. Last pick in the draft to MVP the next year. What a story is that?
Yeah.
Hey, anyone want to comment on the Buccaneers Falcons game and the Buccaneers coming back to win with a person who one would think in another lens would be an MVP, Baker Mayfield.
Well, he won't quite have the numbers to be in the fight for MVP. But what he has done is he's made himself into an attractive prospect. He's on a deal that expires, 1-year deal. So it expires at the end of the season. I think Tampa Bay will attempt to extend him probably for another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And if they don't, there'll be quite the little marketplace for him. Because if you are a team that has certain things built around him, he's proven that he can win. He's proven that he's improved his decision making. He's always had enough of an arm, not a cannon, but enough of an arm to make the throws you need to make. He is a competitive athlete. He may not be a freakish athlete, but he's a competitive athlete. When everything breaks down, he can extend plays. He has a deceptively powerful lower body. You saw on one play where he just ran through a defender. I don't want to see him do that too often, but he is a guy who has a lot of junk in the trunk, and so he can push through. If you hit him up top and he's got body lean going, he's a run through that tackle as he proved today.
I thought you were talking about physical attributes.
He's a thick boy, yes. I mean, however you want to.
I wanted you to say that. I wanted you to say that. Thank you. I appreciate for using us Gen Zers lingo, Bill. I genuinely appreciate that.
Yes, the double C thick can be applied to him.
He is indeed. No, he's triple C thick.
Yes. Baker Reagan Mayfield is the guy that. Remember when he did the get your weight up? Remember that? The get your weight up. He pulled on somebody.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a little bit of a cocky, a little bit of swagger, but he's got it under control. At other points in his career earlier, he would get out of control with it and try to make plays he's not capable of making. So there's I'd say probably about a 40% chance that this team makes the playoffs, but they wouldn't have had even that chance if he weren't out there making some of the plays he's made. They're right there in the thick of it, and the NFC South is, there for the taking. I mean, I think 3 teams have a legitimate chance to win it.
Yeah, it's the Saints, Falcons, and Buccaneers, and then you have the Panthers who
do not have a legitimate chance to win. Probably much of anything.
Look, the Panthers don't want to win. Anytime you have a situation where you're first down on your 24, you throw incomplete. Second down, throw incomplete. Third down, throw incomplete. And then, fourth down on your own 24, and you throw for an incomplete pass without punting, as opposed to punting. I mean, what is that? Who does that? And
the Carolina Panthers, I guess.
Leaving the Saints with, hey, let them walk in for a touchdown, 24 yards, sure. I mean, that is an affront to the game. It really is. There's no explanation for that.
Well, the explanation is trying to get the ball back. That's the explanation there, that you don't want them to run the clock out.
Look, they didn't try to get a first down. I don't want to hear an excuse for that. I will.
I thought about the walk-in touchdown for the Saints. That's what you're talking about.
No, I'm saying the Saints got the ball on their own 24 because the Panthers went for it for 4th and 10 on the 24. Okay.
On the 24,
yeah. And I'm saying, who does that as opposed to punting it? That's not football. That's like, well, you know what? We don't care. We're just kind of like going through the motions, and we're just going to have him throw it. I mean, which really, it doubles down just on how bad. It's not just their play, Bill and Vinny. It's their approach. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's like this organization just doesn't care. I mean, if that's the case, sell the team to somebody who wants it.
The issue though is I agree with you. David Tepper has won like 20 or 25 games since buying the team like 5-6 years ago. And in the past 18 months, you could throw his MLS team. He has fired 4 different head coaches. So yeah, it's been a bit of a conundrum of dysfunction. And this Panthers team, at least in the second half of last year, if they were almost won the division last year, don't forget.
Yeah.
This year, the only win was a last-second field goal against the. Yeah, the only win this year was a very last-second field goal where they beat the Texans by 1 point. the closest I can think of when it comes to like bad Panthers teams is the 2001 Panthers team. That was the George Seifert Panthers, where they won their first game of the season and they lost the final 15. This feels way worse than that because at least in that one game against the Vikings, they at least were able to score more than 1 point against their opponent. In this case, like the quarterback play is bad. The running game is almost non-existent. The defense took a step back.
Chuba Hubbard looked pretty good today.
But, Vinny, we were talking about before you were out, but I'll say what I said before. The Panthers offensive coordinator does not give Bryce Young an offense to play in that is quarterback friendly. Asking him to throw downfield in the middle where the defenders are looking for it, off time, not working on his footwork so that the ball comes out at the precise point, not giving him super short passes to throw. I mean, look, no flares, no flats, no bubble screens, no zero passes, none of that. All right. Those are 4 different versions of super short passes I just gave you in just 3 seconds. So if I can do that and they're not running them, there's something wrong with that organization. It just is. And then, coach, we have a certain philosophy. Philosophy is not working. It's not producing a win, dump the philosophy. Jeez Louise. I mean, I'm tired of this angels and devils stuff. They're running multi-billion-dollar organizations. It's time for us as fans to demand a better brand of football based on analytics. If they can't bring it, forget. I mean, real analytics. I don't mean the kind that, you hire somebody, give them a chump change to work for you, and have them give you coffee when you feel like it and all that stuff. It's been diminished to, as opposed to when Ramal Allen was doing it and quality control coaching meant something back in the 60s and the 70s. Now it's a joke. I'm sorry, it just is.
No, it feels like the analytics the Panthers have at their disposal is an old Texas Instruments calculator. That's the best they've got for computer work. Like this Panthers organization as a whole.
Quiet, I still have one of those, young man.
I know. I have a few of mine myself. Here's my TI-83 right here. Of course, very trusty calculator that I always have with me. Still works really well too.
Right.
Love those things.
Is that tape on the back of it? Is that why I saw tape?
Oh no, this was the numbering that I was named. It was listed number 5 for a resource room. They said, "Hey, you can take this," and I kept it.
Oh,
and still works to this day.
Nice. So hey, also while we're on this, can we talk about this whole matter of the Chiefs? Because what I am chafing about with that is, if you take a look at that video, I swear Von Miller was pretty much in the neutral zone himself, and yet they let him get away with it. What's going on? What am I missing, Vinny and Bill?
Well, I think there's 2 things, and obviously, if they had called on him, that would have made that offsetting, and would have given them another attempt at the down. I think that when they looked at it, they first noted the offensive penalty, and then the defensive penalty could have been called, but it was borderline. I think that's probably what the difference was.
Yeah. My mom was saying the one they called was borderline.
Yeah. I would not dispute that.
Yeah. And Sir Chai writes, he says he likes Antonio Pierce. This is talking about the Raiders, but he should have benched AOC for Jimmy Garoppolo. You think time for the return of Jimmy?
Anything that could spark the offense at this point, I wouldn't mind for the Raiders because, listen, I liked AOC in moments this year, but when the Vikings benched Josh Dobbs for Nick Mullins, not saying they're going to keep him on the bench for the rest of the season, it showed that the team needed an offensive spark somewhere, just literally anything, because they weren't getting it. But the Raiders didn't do that, and instead they went with Aiden O'Connell the rest of the game and just felt like, honestly, anything at this point. I'd even take Brian Hoyer again at this point. And that's nothing against Aiden O'Connell. But, if the Raiders want to win games, especially if they're in the thick of it for the wild card chase, and they're going to be against the Chargers without Justin Herbert now, probably for the rest of the season with a broken finger.
Right.
You can't have Aiden O'Connell against Easton Stick.
Well,
Nothing against Easton.
Let me ask you something. When we get to the point where instead of changing quarterbacks, we change offensive coordinators, or if it's a home game and we're so inclined, we just open up play calling to the audience, right? Think about that. Hey, our offensive coordinator just sucks today. Hey, fans, here's a board. Pick the play for us, and we'll run it. Why not?
With how it was today, I think that might have done a better job for the Raiders, actually.
Yeah,
when it gets that dire, I wouldn't mind it. But I think in the case of the Raiders,
it is that dire. Sorry,
that is true. That is true. Not as dire as the Panthers, though. That's a whole different level of dire. Panthers is like there's dire situation, and there's like you're literally like neck deep in the pit of hell.
Yeah, right down there with the Saints. My Lord.
Oh, geez. Oh yeah. Oh, geez. Just that game in total.
I loved it.
that game in total, like, forget that game was such like objectively from an outside observer. God, it's like incomplete passes. Interception, and like, yeah, he had the 2 touchdowns at the end by Jimmy Graham, but like outside of that, he didn't look good.
No, and then he's walking off at one point, once again pointing at his groin. It's like, oh, and they quickly turned the camera away from him. If you notice that, that's like, when is this farcical crap going to stop? I'm wondering. Hey, they scored.
Yep.
Who did?
The comeback is on.
The
Eagles scored. Touchdown.
It was
what kind of rushing, passing?
Mr. Carter.
It was a scoop and score.
It was Mr.
Jalen Carter.
Mr. Carter.
The
first round pick.
Yeah, Jalen Carter.
Georgia. The dog went dog, and he had help from Fletcher Cox. So
Philadelphia Georgia Bulldogs.
And here we go. And there goes Cox pushing back and gets to. Oh, I'm sorry. It was Cox that caused the fumble.
Yeah,
and the
scoop it out. And the scoop was by Jalen Carter. Yeah.
Right, and Jalen scooped it up and ran. He can run, man.
So good.
Jalen is not slow. No, Jalen is not slow.
No,
how about that?
Fletcher Cox is so good.
So you called it, Bill. The comeback is on.
Yeah, I mean, they're a second half team. They've been a second half team for years. That's not news to anybody.
And now, also, Jesus says, why do the Eagles leave wide receivers wide open? Do they?
Well, he's just talking about the zone, right? So they're playing a lot of 2-man. And if you don't get pressure when you're playing that coverage, yes, those areas, they're going to be gaps. And those, that's just the weakness of the zone. That's how it works. And they really usually get pressure. And that's what they're usually depending on. But they haven't been getting consistent pressure tonight. So when you play a lot of 2-man, you're counting on 2 things. One, like I said, getting to the quarterback, and 2, a quarterback that can't hurt you too badly running the ball. Like you use 2-man a lot against, say, a guy like Tom Brady, right? A guy you're not afraid is going to tuck it and run it. You would stay away from that against a guy like, say, Michael Vick, right? Or Lamar Jackson, or anybody who's really, really, really a good runner. But the weakness of it is that area, right? The seams is weak, and that hole shot, that 17 to 22 yard area on the outside, it's just going to be open. Like, you can take away some of that hole in the middle if you do that version of Tampa 2, where your Mike linebacker or the person who is doing the job of the Mike linebacker, which nowadays very often is a third safety, just runs deep into that whole area. But still, in front of that player, there's availability. So when you're playing a lot of zone, particularly if you're playing either cover 2 or cover 3 a lot, if you don't get pressure, and that's why, so many teams that build around either cover 2 or cover 3 have to have that interior pressure player, right? So think about the great cover 2 defenses in the history of the game, like that Tampa 2, the literal Tampa 2, right? They always had a great interior pass rusher like Warren Sapp, and they've had other guys who were maybe not quite Warren Sapp, but close to it after Sapp or around the time of Sapp. Ndamukong Suh, of course, at one point was that interior pressure player for them. The Super Bowl run Bears teams had Tommy Harris, and when Tommy Harris broke down, their defense wasn't as effective, but they had that. They were another of those teams that played a lot of cover two. So, and then we cover Legion of Boom. That's a cover 3 team, but once again, they had that interior pressure player in Michael. His brother was a tight end from Texas A&M. He's doing television now. Oh my gosh.
You're talking about Michael Davis?
Nope. His brother was a tight end with the Bears and with the
Marcellus Wiley?
No, not Wiley. But his brother's name is Marcellus, so you got close.
Bennett.
But Marcellus Wiley is the Bennett brothers, right? The Bennett brothers, right? The Bennett brothers, right? Michael and Marcellus.
Thank God for the internet. Thanks, Vinny.
I just knew that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But Michael Bennett was one of those great interior pressure players. If you can't get interior pressure when you're playing that particular defense, you're going to get gashed, right? They'll be able to hit those open areas.
Well, he's got a lot. Jesus has a lot to say. Jesus, I'm not going to get through all of yours, but I'll get through some of the more salient ones. Mark Davis, overpaid and overrated players. Dobbs has quick feet. Aiden doesn't have arm strength. Nice receivers are left wide open deep. Flacco loves to throw deep. Hurts an MVP. Play Steve Trask.
I think he means Kyle Trask. But wait, I don't know who he means because Kyle Trask is backing up Baker Mayfield right now. I don't know who he's talking about, actually. I don't know who he's talking about.
Amy never played for the Raiders.
Yeah, I'm not sure to whom he's referring. But if he means Kyle Trask, I think they're pretty satisfied with what Baker Reagan Mayfield's doing in Tampa. And if he means Steve Tasker, Steve retired about almost 28, 27 years ago, something like that. The Raiders struggled to run the ball in this game, and that's why their offense did essentially, to quote Jim Morris Sr., diddly poo. The fact is that for the most part, if you've watched the Eagles, all throughout the season, their secondary has done really yeoman's work, done a really good job of holding up, and they've gotten that pressure in almost every game. And the slide sort of began with this really tough run. They allowed a lot of points to the Bills, but survived that game. Yeah, he did mean Kyle Trask. Okay. Yeah, well, Kyle Trask is probably not a better option than Baker, quite frankly. Baker's played very well. So they watched Kyle in practice every week and have decided that Baker's the better option.
Hey, Joe, let's wrap up so we can get back to the game.
Sure.
Vinny, you want to get the last word?
Yeah.
We're in Cowboy Blue.
Actually, Cowboy Blue, well, it's a bit more theirs is a bit more navy, but sometimes it could be. I would say that when it comes to this week in the NFL, the thing that really stuck out to me still is just how competitive the AFC wildcard race is.
Yep.
I mean, if you throw in the division races, you have 7 spots for the playoffs, and then you have 13 teams. Well, I guess you can whittle it down to 12 now with the Chargers now, because the ones that aren't competing are the Patriots, the Jets, the Titans, and probably the Chargers now. So you have 14. So 12 teams, 7 spots. Ravens, Dolphins, and Chiefs look like they might make it. But now the AFC South is a bit of a question. Could the Colts or the Texans get in there? But even the wild card race, the Browns have been really competitive. The Colts have been competitive. The Texans have been competitive. The Broncos are competitive. Even the Steelers might even sneak in there. And even without Joe Burrow, the Bengals feel like they could potentially sneak in a playoff spot for all we know. So we're in the home stretch, guys. There's only 4 more weeks of NFL football left before we get to the playoffs, and it is going to be wild.
Last word there, unless Bill, you want to add something?
Well, my last word is you're going to see, due to whether a combination of injury or ineffectiveness, things like that, you're going to see some rookies play more and more. I mentioned Sidney Brown, right? Due to the injury, I guess the concussion protocol is being exercised regarding Reed Blankenship. But you're going to see some of these guys emerge, right? Players that, while they might be reserves now, forced to play, they'll be starters next year. Some of these guys that they're replacing won't be back. So this is an exciting time for those that have done a lot of work on scouting some of these rookies who haven't played much but are playing more and more. Look at what Jonathan Mingo, well, though he didn't have a big day today, but look at what he's beginning to do now for the Panthers, who are probably going to move on from some of their older players as they reboot, yet again, or rebuild, or whatever term you want to use, their franchise. We're seeing more and more of these young players emerge. So I'm excited about that as we head down the home stretch of the season.
Yeah, it is. All right, guys. Thank you so much. And folks, we'll see you through the week. Possibly tomorrow, definitely Thursday. And remember, subscribe to Zennie62 on YouTube. Bookmark ZennieReport.com and enjoy the rest of this, what promises to be very scintillating contest. Guys, stick around in the background. That ends the stream.
Thanks, guys.